Coming up on Mississippi Roads, we visit the DeGrumman Children's Literature Collection at the University of Southern Mississippi, the Blues Archives at Ole Miss, and the Ulysses S. Grant Presidential Library at Mississippi State. All that coming up now on Mississippi Roads.
Down Mississippi Road. Mississippi Road.
Hi, welcome to Mississippi Roads. I'm your host, Walt Grayson. You know, here in Mississippi, we have a lot of museums and archives, and you'll find them housed in anything from government buildings to, well, I know of one in a railroad boxcar. But a lot of them are on the campuses of our public universities, and that's where we are today. On the campus of the University of Southern Mississippi in Hattiesburg, where you'll find the McCain Library, which houses the collections and archives of USM, one of which is the subject of our first story. It's the DeGrumman Children's Literature Collection. By the time we get through exploring it, I think you'll agree with me that the University of Southern Mississippi holds in trust the stories of our childhood.
Oh, the DeGrumman collection is awesome. Just being able to go in and look at works of like Ezra Jack Keats and other authors, their drawings, their notes, the Curious George collection, being able to do study and research, especially important for students who are in library science school, just getting to do that. And like I said, we've had people to come from England and just all over the world just to look at that collection. And we have authors steadily donating and giving items to that. So it's just amazing.
The DeGrumman is an amazing collection. To be able to see the history of children's books and children's literature and to see how it has grown through the years. And it shows just the journey of children's literature and the impact that it can have on children.
The DeGrumman collection is an archive. Plain and simply. It's an archive of over 1,300 authors and illustrators' works. It was founded in 1966 when Dr. Lena Y. DeGrumman came to the university to teach children's literature. She began writing her friends in the publishing world, different authors and illustrators, some she knew, some she didn't know, and asked them to contribute bits and pieces of their work to her little children's collection that she was starting. As the year progressed, she saw that they were receiving an enormous response to her request, and the head librarian at the time decided they needed to have a venue where these materials that people were sending could be offered to a public viewing. So they decided to have a children's book festival. This year is particularly thrilling because Dave Pilkey is the author of Captain Underpants, and he is winning the medallion. He has agreed to give a presentation to local school children, and we are thrilled with his generosity and with his commitment to reaching children in the best way he can. He's also going to make sure that every child has a book in his or her hand when they leave his presentation.
Guess what I get to say? You get a book, you get a book, you get a book, you get a book, you get a book. Everybody gets a book.
You know, I think reading for fun is incredibly important because there have been so many studies that show that kids who read for entertainment do better in school. They do better in spelling, vocabulary, and math. Across the board, they just get smarter and smarter.
Literature plays a valuable role in the lives of children. Ezra Jack Keats, whose papers we have in the DeGrumman collection, whose original art we have, was the creator of a very famous book, The Snowy Day.
Originally, Harvard wanted his papers, and actually it was the first time Harvard had ever requested the papers of a children's book writer. but they wanted to cherry pick. They wanted to pick out the pieces of memorabilia and papers that they felt were important and discard the rest. And that wasn't acceptable to us. People often ask us, why? Why are Ezra's papers in Mississippi? And the reasons are actually quite simple. The de Grummond is one of the premier collections of children's literature in this country. That's one really good reason. And another is that in 1980, Ezra received the USM Silver Medallion for a Lifetime Achievement. And he came down and he immediately felt at home. He felt at home, he felt embraced, he felt understood. He made friends, and he understood that this would be a wonderful place for some of his artwork. But it wasn't until he died and it came time to find a home for his papers that the decision to make it the de Grummond happened. Children's literature is much more important than I believe it is understood to be. I feel that it's becoming more and more appreciated. But it is how we teach our children, and how we teach our children governs who they become.
Did you get it? Very good.
They've had to move the library at USM several times in the history of the school due to the increased student population, which is growing all the time, and also the expansion of the campus. It started out back here in Southern Hall. But as old as the University of Southern Mississippi is, it's not the oldest institution of higher learning in Mississippi. That distinction belongs to Mississippi College in Clinton, organized in 1826. By the way, we've got more to say about MC in just a few minutes. But second on the list, the University of Mississippi at Oxford, organized in 1844, and where we'll visit a very special archive. One that, among other things, contains the history of music in Mississippi. The Blues Archive at Ole Miss is said to be the largest academic collection of blues material anywhere.
Well, there's a big dog howling at the moon.
The Blues Archive is a collection of blues sound recordings, photographs, memorabilia, business documents related to the record industry, and much more. And it is available to the public to come and access for either blues research or enjoyment. We're open Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. The Blues Archive is one of the units within the Department of Archives and Special Collections, which is part of the University Library System here at the University of Mississippi.
The Department of Archives and Special Collections at the University of Mississippi's mission is to acquire, preserve, protect, and most importantly, make accessible to the public items related to the state of Mississippi, its history and culture, its music.
Our primary focus is, students and faculty here at the University of Mississippi, but we get researchers and blues fans from all over the world coming here to see unique materials that you can't find anywhere else.
I'm quite often asked, especially by younger children coming in to see the archives, gosh, how much is that worth? And there's so many ways to calculate worth just outside of monetary value. Just knowing that some of the things in our collection are absolutely irreplaceable. There would be no way to substitute them within the collection. And that is what makes an archival collection unique. That is how they are different from other parts of a library, is that you cannot duplicate what they have.
We have original Robert Johnson 78s. You see Robert Johnson 78 selling from anywhere from like $3,000 to $10,000, sometimes a little bit more. But we also have all the business documents from a record company like Trumpet Records. Trying to place a value estimate on that. I'm not sure what that would be, but that's, so that includes original recording contracts of people like Sonny Boy Williamson, #2, Elmore James, Jerry Boogie McCain, Willie Love, and many other blues, rockabilly, and gospel artists. And so, when you look at the totality of a collection like that, I mean, it's both financially valuable, but just culturally and intellectually valuable as well.
From my perspective, archives are vitally important, even more so now. They are the cultural record of a region, especially ours, a region and a people. It's their legacy.
Now, as an archive, we differ from a museum a little bit. In a museum, you can come in and there are a lot of exhibit spaces where you can just browse, take a self-guided tour. Here, we do have a lot of exhibit space in the archive, but we exist primarily for people coming in and requesting materials to be pulled.
We have over 35,000 linear feet of manuscripts, then several more linear feet of home movies, films of Mississippians, and over 70,000 audio recordings in the Blues Archive.
Well, here we are back in the stacks. This is an area that's closed off to the public, so when people come in and they request to hear a record, for instance, we'll come back here and pull a record for them and bring it out. Here it is. It's Booker White's Parchment Farm. It's an important recording. One of our state's and the world's best blues slide guitarist. His powerful style influenced a lot of blues artists. But yeah, so these, we'll pull a record like this and take it out and set people up on the turntables and give them a set of headphones and let them listen.
I like the Blues Archives because they have a fascinating collection of records. And for the most part, the only way you could come across records if you find an antique store, and they're going to be very expensive. But by coming to the archives, you can come and take a listen at a record free of charge.
The Blues Archive opened to the public in 1984. And it really got started when B.B. King donated his personal record collection to the university in 1982 and 83, that the university realized we needed to create this blues archive. B.B. King donated almost 10,000 sound recordings in a variety of formats, anything from LPs to 78s, 45s, and even about 15 Edison wax cylinders. Probably the most fragile thing we have are Edison wax cylinders. Thomas Edison invented the process to record and play back audio in 1877. And they were done on these hardened wax cylinders. These wax cylinders are extremely fragile, and that's one of the reasons they transitioned away to 78s. Because, if I were to drop this or squeeze it too tightly, this will just shatter.
Some people have this idea that the blues started other places, but the blues started here in Mississippi. And the birthplace of America's music starts with the blues. And if the blues started in Mississippi, that means America's music in its entirety started in Mississippi. We have a lot of people outside of Mississippi that like to paint a bad picture about Mississippi, and there are a lot of great things that if they would take the time just to come see, that they will be able to experience the good of Mississippi, which makes it great, starting with the music.
The blues are so important to Mississippi's history, culture, and heritage. And if I can be just a little part of preserving that and exposing others to this incredible music, you know, I've done something right.
Now, Ole Miss may be one of the oldest schools in the state, but some of our smaller, lesser-known colleges have made historic contributions and distinctions for themselves. Let's take a look. The first institution of higher education chartered in Mississippi was all the way back in territorial days, Jefferson College in Washington, just north of Natchez, organized in 1802. Now, it didn't actually start holding classes until 1811, and it really never got around to being a real college. It was always a preparatory institution, or a high school. A young Jefferson Davis went here, as well as the sons of a number of notable families in the area, including the sons of botanist and nature artist James Audubon. Rumor is Audubon was an instructor at Jefferson College. Actually not, but he did teach a short while at nearby Elizabeth Girls School, also in Washington. The majestic oaks along the property line in front of Jefferson College campus are called the Burr Oaks. The story goes that the wayward former Vice President of the United States, Aaron Burr, was arrested and tried for treason under these oaks. Only a few problems with that story. Although Aaron Burr visited here, he was never arrested. Instead, he was wined and dined and treated like a celebrity. His case was handed over to a grand jury, which saw no need to indict him for anything, so there was no trial. And even if there had been, it couldn't have been held under these oaks. They weren't here in 1807 when all of this happened. Other than that, it's a great story. Jefferson College never gained the status it desired because many of the families of the area sent their sons to nearby Oakland College. Now, Oakland was started by the Presbyterians near Lorman in 1830. It was a four-year college and operated until 1861 when the Civil War started. After the war, Oakland couldn't get it back together, so the state of Mississippi bought the property and reopened the school under the name Alcorn College. Alcorn did considerably better than its predecessor, achieving university status in the 1970s. And the Oakland Chapel on the campus is one of the surviving buildings left over from Oakland College. And by the way, those iron steps leading up to the chapel are from the nearby Windsor ruins, brought to the campus after the huge mansion burned in the late 1800s. Mississippi College in Clinton was coeducational from the beginning, in an era when there were either boys' schools or girls' schools. As comparison, Harvard didn't become coeducational until 1963, Princeton in 1969. Meanwhile, MC started that way in 1826 and became the first institution of higher education in the nation to give a diploma to a female way back in 1831. So when thinking of high standards of academia, Mississippi usually doesn't make the cut, when in reality, Mississippi led, and in many cases still leads, the nation in educational innovations. Now, for instance, state-sponsored junior colleges originated here in Mississippi. But that'll have to be another story. Well, last but not least, in our category of archives and museums is Mississippi State University in Starkville's contribution. And it's a little unusual for Mississippi, I think, because it is the Ulysses S. Grant Presidential Library. Some people have asked, what is the Ulysses S. Grant Presidential Library doing in Mississippi? Fair question, to which I hope we can give you a fair answer in this story.
We're in the Ulysses S. Grant Presidential Library and then the Frank and Virginia Williams collection of Lincolniana. These two museums house the collections of the Ulysses S. Grant Association and then the Lincolniana collection of Frank and Virginia Williams.
The Grant collection moved to Mississippi State in 2008. And as of November of last year, we have opened this new gallery space with a reading room, processing room, cold storage, and office space. So it's much larger than the initial area that the library had. It is a partnership between the Ulysses S. Grant Association and Mitchell Memorial Library and Mississippi State University.
The first thing you notice when you come in is just the quality of the museum itself. It's a very nice gallery. People are also taken back by the life-size statues that we have of Grant throughout his life. There are 4 of them specifically. We also have some really neat video interactives that people can mess around with. It's a very engaging gallery, and I think it's really appealing to children as well.
We believe, and we're pretty sure about this, that we have every letter Grant ever wrote and every letter ever written to him. So if a scholar or a student wants to come and look at this material, they can be pretty sure that they have got everything that's available.
My absolute favorite artifact in the Grant Museum is the book that contains photographs from Grant's funeral. What we have in our collection is one of 4 that we know to be in existence. And then we have the original on display along with a virtual model that people can flip through and actually see the photographs from the end of Grant's life and from the funeral itself. And it helps us preserve the original while also giving people access to the content there.
One of the things that people really react to are some of the paintings that Grant did that are in our museum here. I mean, he was a great painter, and nobody knows. I said, he did that? I said, yeah, he did that. So I love that, too.
Usually the first question that we get when someone comes in is, how is the Ulysses S. Grant Presidential Library in Mississippi? I had that question myself when I first applied to the job. I thought it was a typo, but
we have encountered many surprised people. Almost all of them have been pleasantly surprised to find this here, and people are very pleased to be able to visit a presidential library right here in the heart of Mississippi.
We've gone and we've spoken at various places around the state. People come from around the state, and the usual reaction is pride, that we here in Mississippi have something as valuable as this. And we like to point out something that's in one of our cases, where Grant and Lincoln are talking one time when Grant is fighting against Lee in Virginia. And Lincoln says to Grant, hold on with a bulldog grip. And of course, Mississippi State is the home of the Bulldogs, so we argue that even Lincoln knew it was coming here. But actually, the real reason is because Mississippi State just wanted this and was willing to do it and is willing to continue doing what has to be done.
The Grant Collection was held at the University of Southern Illinois for quite a number of years. At the death of longtime editor John Y. Simon, the Grant Association began looking for a new place to house and hold the Grant Collection. It is at which time the Grant Association president Frank J. Williams, the retired Chief Justice of the Rhode Island Supreme Court, began the process of looking for a new place to hold the Grant Collection.
We had a great relationship with Southern Illinois University, but it soured. And so it was decided that we make a change, and that change was to bring the collection to Mississippi State University, where our second executive director resided as emeritus, John Mazelik. So it all made sense to do this.
And with the help of 2 interim presidents and Dr. Mark Keenum, the current president of Mississippi State, they formed an agreement to move the Grant Collection down to Mississippi State.
And it came here because Mississippi State really did the best job to do what had to be done to host this whole operation.
housed alongside the Presidential Library, we have the Frank and Virginia Williams collection of Lincolniana, which was one of the largest privately owned Lincoln collections in the world. It was donated by a former Chief Justice of the Rhode Island Supreme Court, Frank J. Williams.
He and his wife Virginia had always wanted for their Lincolniana collection to go to a university, particularly in the South, that would really provide opportunities for students to see things and to interact with research that they might not have other opportunities to.
The Frank and Virginia Williams collection of Lincolniana, as it's now called, really started with my buying used Lincoln books at age 13, and then it continued. So this has been a 50-plus year love affair and passion of collecting and also reading as much as one can and studying the man, the leadership of Lincoln and those in the Civil War.
We have all kinds of people that come in to visit. We have researchers that come in to look through our collections. We also just have local people that come in.
Plus, we've had people literally from all over the world, not just places like England, but places like Thailand. Today, there's a group coming from Japan. And most of our people are people who come and like to see presidential libraries. And I have to brag a little bit because one of the visitors we had, it was her last presidential library. And she said, I just want to tell you, you have the best of all of them. And that's a wonderful thing because I've seen some of the others and they're wonderful too.
Well, that's all the time we have for our visit to the campus of the University of Southern Mississippi in Hattiesburg. If you'd like information about anything you've seen on the show, contact us at mpbonline.org/Mississippi Roads. And make sure you like our Mississippi Public Broadcasting Facebook page, as well as our Mississippi Roads Facebook page. Till next time, I'm Walt Grayson. I'll be seeing you on Mississippi Roads.
Mississippi Roads is made possible in part by the generous support of viewers like you. Thank you.